Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Great to be with you whenever we're with you. I'm Josh Mora. Dennis Williams will join us momentarily. This is the Back Nine, and some people assume this is a podcast about golf. But in golf, the Back Nine is the second half of your round. This is a lifestyle podcast. We bring in a guest. We talk about the issues that matter most, the things we can accomplish on the Back Nine of life. Things that matter, like making a 25-footer on 18 to break the heart of your opponent and win a few bucks. Am I right? I'm right. It's almost as exciting as this upcoming episode of The Back Nine.
This is The Back Nine with Dennis Williams and Josh Mora.
Dennis, my friend, so good to see you.
I was not making any 25-footers yesterday. I'm really excited about our guest. We'll get to him in a couple minutes. Yeah. But, man, could I use a putting lesson. My game isn't shit. My game's really good right now. I'm hitting the ball decent, but, man, I struggling with the flat stick for sure.
Yeah,
I'm going to hold mine while you're talking.
Okay, there's our guest. He could give you a putting lesson. That's for sure.
Segue. Might as well jump in.
Let's bring him in. Absolutely. He is a golfer who's a little bit better than we are at golf. He is a girl dad, and only a girl dad like us, but he's twice as prolific. I think he has as many daughters as we have combined.
Okay.
We're nice guys. He's an even nicer guy. And he's a broadcaster working at a national level, which neither of us did until we became podcasters. He is, of course, from New England, like you. He can only be Brad Faxon. And Brad, so glad to have you with us on the Back Nine. Clearly, the first question has to be, can you give my buddy here a little bit of putting advice?
Yes, that might take longer than we have, though.
Oh, it would, for sure.
It definitely would.
Yeah.
It's a commonly asked question these days.
I know. You are. What's funny, because a couple of weeks ago, I did see a video of you helping Rory. Somebody caught you helping him with giving him a little putty tip on the green. So I'll just take that one. What were you telling Rory a couple of weeks ago when everybody caught you guys, you talking to him and giving him a quick tip?
You know what? The tip I don't know if what I said to Rory is a tip. It's something we've talked about, and it sometimes it takes years. We've been speaking to each other now for 6 years about putting, but for Rory, a great feel for him is he likes to try and feel like the putter head stays low through the ball and then his right shoulder goes down and works like a piston with his right arm to follow through and extend. So the right arm is straightening. He's trying to feel like that putter stays low. And that's a good, solid feel. Solid contact. I mean, for some of the greatest players in the world, like Scottie Scheffler or Rory McIlroy, it's very uncomplicated what they think about.
Sure.
Okay, very cool.
So that we don't lose the breadth of our audience with golf expertise, because I appreciate that tip. You know, Brett, I want to ask you about making the transition to being a broadcaster. How have you enjoyed that? What are you finding fulfilling about being behind the mic, watching, analyzing golf compared to how you were as a player?
It's a bit of a story. I'm 62 years old now. I did my first little tryout in 2008 for NBC. I think they were trying to figure out if I could be one of their next guys. And I really had a breakthrough moment, I think. In 2007, the Deutsche Bank Championship was at the TPC at Boston. It was an NBC event, one of the playoff events. And I had just had surgery on my legs. So I was, maybe it was even 2000. Yeah, it was 2007. And I couldn't play. I was on injured reserve. And the producer of the show asked me if I would come up and sit next to Johnny Miller and Dan Hicks, who were the stalwarts for the team. He had helped to do the architecture, the renovation of the golf course with a famous architect named Gil Hance. So I went up to do 15 minutes on air with them to just talk about the coverage and the course. And they asked me if I'd stay for another segment. I stayed for another segment. I ended up spending 2 hours with them talking golf. And I think that was like, oh, if we need a new guy, this guy could be it. So I've been doing broadcasts on and off since 2010 when I had my first year with NBC. I don't know if you remember when Fox Sports came and kind of did all the USGA events starting in 2015. That year, Jordan Spieth won at Chambers Bay. That was our first year. And got to do that for 4 years. And now I'm in my second year back with NBC, doing 15 events for them this year and next year. And NBC owns the Golf Channel as well. They own Sky Sports. So I've had like numerous positions, and calling golf has been something in my blood forever. And like Dennis, I spent a lot of time on Cape Cod. My dad was an avid golfer and a member at Eastford Hoe when I was a little kid. And I remember caddying for them in the mornings. I would go after we finished the round, I would go play, and they would sit on the patio and have lunch and a beer or two, and I would continue to play golf. And all these guys did was talk about golf. So I feel like all I've done is talk about golf my whole life. And it's a pretty good way to continue being close to the game as I get into the back nine of my life.
Brad, my mom and her friends used to call it golf breath. You'd be done playing golf, and then you'd keep talking about golf, and they'd go, we've had enough golf breath for today. So, yeah, we know the story, because I was the same way. I grew up playing on Cape Cod. I played Cranberry Valley and caddied for my dad. Same story. But, yeah, it's so great to have you on the show. What has been the biggest transition, and how do you get to that moment where you realize, like, you're on the back nine? When you sort of make that transition, not just into broadcasting, but the transition into being a world-class athlete, 8-time champion, like you were. I mean, you didn't have any kind of small career. That is a big transition to have to be that kind of athlete and then move to the back nine of life.
Well, I think you get a rude awakening immediately when you have to drive into the TV compound instead of into the front parking lot of the clubhouse, right? Now you're parking in an area where you need a pass that you've never seen one of those passes before as a former player. It's usually a dirt parking lot in a compound that has portalettes and some kind of catering rather than gourmet foods that the players get these days. And it's work. You have to really get to know the players on as much of an intimate level as you can. Most of the courses that I've covered at NBC, I've played. And the ones that I haven't, now you're spending time walking the courses. I don't get to play the courses the week of the tournament the way the players do. But I follow players around, and it always sounds better to the audience if I can say Scotty Scheffler told me or Rory McIlroy hit this shot yesterday, like I was there. So I try to prepare for that and give. I learned a valuable lesson early on when I first did my TV, that the TV talks. The TV tells you and shows you what's happening. I've got to add to the pictures that you see at home. So if I can't say anything valuable to make you hear something different than what you can see, it's sometimes better not to say anything.
When I was still in sports media, Frank Thomas, the Hall of Fame infielder, outfielder for the White Sox, said to me that when he left playing to come to media, it was coming to the dark side. Right? I'm sure you feel that a little bit to some degree, Brad, but when you're talking to the players, some of them overlapped with you, but the younger ones have not. I mean, we're recording this the day after the Masters, and there was a 23-year-old Swedish superstar, Ludwig Åberg, who finished second. Do those guys who are of that age, and maybe even especially the Europeans, do they know who you were? Do they know who you are? Do they have that same kind of respect? And I ask that because I think a lot of us who are not in the professional sports world still make those kinds of transitions, and we see other people coming up being where we used to be, young, hungry, trying to get where we have achieved or what we've accomplished. So what is it like to speak to those younger players coming up?
I mean, a player like Ludwig Åberg would have no idea who I am. Growing up in Sweden, he would have never seen me play on television because I had pretty much retired. But I have this really strange connection to them through the fact that I've coached Rory McIlroy and his putting side of his game for 6 years. So that really gives me some credibility. So when I see an Åberg or see a Morikawa or a Justin Thomas, they're not like, oh, Faxon's a TV guy, he used to play. He's Rory's putting coach. Uh-huh. So in a strange way, that gives me like some credibility with these younger guys where they're not intimidated or stay away from me. And in the last, we've done 7 of the last 9 weeks or 8 of the last 10 weeks in our coverage. And I found one of the best ways to get to talk to these players is in the Pro-Am days, the Wednesday before the tournament starts. They have to play with the amateurs. And when I walk out there, and I did it this year at the Valspar in Tampa, the day after, the week after that compelling finish where Scheffler won and Schauffele and Harmon and Wyndham Clark all had a chance to tie, I walked with Xander Schauffele in the ropes, and I think he'd rather talk to me a little bit, knowing that I'm a former player and kind of what he was going through. And I think that the amateurs that those guys play with, they would be more my age, where they would know, hey, this is cool. Faxon's here talking to whoever I'm talking with. And I did the same thing with Scheffler in Houston, where they're much more amiable and kind of not in the green light, stay away from me, I'm getting ready to go play a real tournament round.
We'll be right back. Friends, I want to tell you about a really exciting company called Pete Learning. Pete is dedicated to helping organizations of all sizes optimize their training initiatives. They specialize in enabling the development of AI-powered courses, which can then be tailored for all kinds of corporate training needs. Pete Learning offers a suite of customizable and extremely cost-effective solutions that enable companies to deliver personalized workforce learning to their employees. Put simply, Pete is an indispensable partner for any evolving company. So visit Pete Learning at pete.com. That's PETE.com.
If you need a benefit auctioneer for your next fundraising gala, hire Eric Goodman, who's broken fundraising records all over the country. Josh and I have known Eric for over 30 years, and he's one of the most passionate, energetic, and hardworking people we know. Eric's consulting strategies and successful fundraising techniques is why he raised $1 million in 10 minutes at a recent event. Visit yourfundraisingteam.com to see a video of his work, testimonials, and then book with Eric today so your nonprofit can have a record-breaking night.
All right, back to the show.
So, Brad, Josh touched on this at the beginning. So we each have 2 daughters each, and you have 4. So what's it like for you being a girl dad and the sort of transition into, we've talked about this on the show before, you have little girls and then they kind of transition into becoming your friends and like you're hanging out with them. Like I think it's the hardest thing to be a girl dad and to have that transition. So tell us about you as a girl dad.
Makes me smile, these great questions. I think it's hard, but it's also the best thing in the world, too, having your daughter go through those stages, like you said, and then become a friend and somebody you can have real-life conversations with and real-life experiences with. I have 4 daughters. 3 of them were from a first marriage, and they're 35, 33, and 29. And then my baby is 22, about to graduate from Southern Methodist in Dallas. Mm-hmm. So get one more tuition off the books will be kind of fun. But the first child you have, I think it's one of the most exciting times of your life, like Scotty Scheffler is going to see this week, to have their first child. And then those experiences with a baby. And what's the slowest you've ever driven a car? When you leave the hospital after the baby's born and you can finally go home. And then I think girls are much easier early on to take care of, right? They're not as rambunctious as the boys get at a young age, and you feel like it's a little calmer. And I'm generalizing, but from the 4 I had, that's what it seemed to be. And then it gets very emotional there through those teenage years. And you go through all these incredible stages. And now these 3 older girls that I have, they're all over the country. One's in LA, one's in Denver, one's in Durham. They're all about to get married, I think, within the next year. Mm-hmm. So I'm at that stage now where I didn't know if anyone would ever be engaged, be married, have a child. And it's an exciting, exciting time to have these girls.
You go right from paying tuitions to paying for weddings, unfortunately, right?
4
of them. My God. Yeah, that's probably, and we know whose funeral it's going to be after you've paid for 4 weddings.
Exactly.
And so what is that like then, anticipating what's coming next for you? The role of a patriarch of a large family, the role of grandfather to however many grandchildren your daughters end up having. And how do you prepare as you think about what that stage of life is going to be? What are the thoughts that are going through your head? What are the anticipations, the excitement, the whatever the qualities are that are occupying your thoughts?
It never stops. First of all, as a professional athlete where we had to be on the road so much, my kids got great opportunities to travel really all over the world and meet kids that they'll probably have friendships for their lives. People from Scotland, England, Ireland, Australia, Sweden, that they'll never forget that. And then the difficult part was when they got to school age, you have to make this choice. Do you keep them in a school and leave them, or do you take them on the road, which a lot of the offers seem to be homeschooling their kids on the road so they can stay together. And now that I'm at this age where so many of my friends' kids are getting married, and I talk to the dads about what's it like when your daughter's getting married and you have to talk. I mean, how do you prepare for this? And I'm trying to take some notes now and put down, okay, I know this moment's coming, and put down some of the great experiences I had with each one. What's the uniqueness of each child? And what can you tell in front of 150 to 200 people that show up at a wedding? I don't know how big these weddings are going to be. But I mean, I know it's an emotional moment. It's a proud moment. It's an exciting moment. And I'm choking. I get chills thinking about these 3 or 4 times that I'm going to have to do this.
Yeah, that's great. Hey,
not for each one. Not for
well, we'll transition out of that. I have a question for you because athletes have a lot of coaches and mentors over their lives, and you've had a lot of time, probably as we all do on the back nine, to sort of life, to sort of reflect on who had the biggest impact on you and what did they say to you, and what are some things that you can share with our audience as a professional athlete that one of your great mentors taught you or gave to you or that you can share with our audience?
When I was a young kid in Rhode Island, my parents were divorced at an early age. My father was a very good golfer, and I had a little bit of golf blood in me. And I had just a neighbor of mine, a kid that was 13 when I was 12, tell me I could make a lot of money as a caddy if I went up to Rhode Island Country Club, you ride your bike up there and caddy. And this was in the early 1970s. And I listened to him. I started caddying, and I started to meet some of the members of the club. And obviously, if you're a member at a private club, you've done something good to earn some money. And I was just so curious about how did people make money. I learned a lot about the skills you need in life, shaking a hand, asking questions, manners. We talk about the rules of golf and etiquette. I mean, the etiquette of life. I learned all that there. And there was one particular guy named Brad Boss. And Brad was a very successful businessman. He owned a company that you would have heard of called AT Cross Writing Instruments, which was a very well-known pen. Yeah. And this guy was like, he was a stud to me. He not only did he run a nice business, he had a beautiful wife, 3 boys. Golf was a passion. Squash was a passion. He was immaculately dressed. When you shook your hand, it was like staring you in the eye. It was a hard handshake, valuable lessons. And not only did he show me how to be nice to someone, he was very competitive, and that kind of rubbed off on me a lot. And coincidentally, he's a member, and he's 91 years old now. He's a member at Augusta National. When I won my first tournament and got to play in the Masters, he took me there before the tournament, and he made a hole-in-one that week.
Wow.
And it was such a great way to celebrate my victory with this guy that I looked up to so much. And this past week, I always carry a cross pen with me to have on the desk when we're on the air. And I had forgotten mine at home. And I called him, and we had dinner Tuesday night on site at the Masters. And I said, I hate to ask you this. I said, do you have an extra cross pen that I could borrow for the week of the tournament? He brought out this gold cross pen. It has his initials, BRB, Bradford Russell Boss. And it had the Masters logo emblazoned on the clip. And I had that pen out all week long, and it made me think of him and how like humbled I was to be able to be there. And it's funny when you're on camera, what people notice, right? They notice things like your socks. They might notice a watch or a coat or a tie. And I can't tell you how many people saw this gold pen, and people would equate that all gold pen with a cross pen. So Brad Boss was a man that was a huge part of my life growing up. That was one. And then at this club where I was caddying, it was kind of the country club where all the executives at the Acushnet company, the Titleist company, would come to play golf. And there was one man in particular there, Wally Uline, who was the president of the company. He was a very good player. He was a big brother to me, who really helped me with kind of the motivational side of what it takes and getting up early, doing things that everybody else isn't doing. And he was a kind of a shyer guy at the time, and then ended up running the biggest golf company in the world. It's a $4 billion, $5 billion company now. And he still was the smartest man I ever met, and particularly in the golfing space. And I really relied on those two people for everything in my life. And Wally Uline had a great poster in his office. He was the first guy that introduced me to Earl Nightingale or anybody that was talking about how to get ahead in life, Dennis Waitley. And he had this poster that I never forgot what it said, but it's not a race to see who gets there first, but it's a race to see who gets there and stays there the longest. And I'm proud of that, because if you looked at all the PGA Tour players that ever played this game, and I never knew this until about 6 months ago, someone sent me a list of the most tournaments played in history of all the tour players, from Arnold Palmer and Sam Snead and Ben Hogan. And there were thousands and thousands of players that have played the PGA Tour, and I'm 12th on the all-time list of most tournaments played.
Wow.
And it's a wow. When I look at those names that are around me, and there aren't many in front of me. Arnold's in front of me. Billy Casper's in front of me. There's some big names, Raymond Floyd. But to be on that list, I don't ever see any of these younger players now ever playing nearly that many tournaments. It just won't happen.
Yeah, right. Real quick, I just want to say what a pleasure it's been to have you on the show, especially with the Cape Cod connection. My cousin is a member at Eastward Ho, which you mentioned on the show. My dad has hung out with your sister in Harwich, and we've followed your career since I was a little kid playing golf on the Cape. So it's just been a true honor, Brad, to have you on the show. So thank you. We could have gone for 2 hours.
Absolutely.
We appreciate your time. We really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Des. You know what? I have a friend of mine from Chatham named Jack Bowman. Jack was a member at Eastward Ho, and he was 3 years older than I. He's 3 years older than I am. And I played my first golf tournament ever with him at Eastward Ho. It was a member guest. And I was 12 and he was 15, and we had handicaps. I was like a 13 at 12, and he was a better golfer than me at that time. And we dusted everybody in this member guest, and we were playing the old men, and I don't think they liked having these little hot-shot teenagers just drumming them through the field. I have such great memories of Cape Cod, Nauset Beach, Long Pond, and Harwich, where my dad had a little cottage, and I caddied on those mountainous hills there. And it was a big part of the formative years of my life.
Well, there's another connection. I grew up on Long Pond. Our house was on Long Pond in Harwich. Absolutely true. Yep, that's where our house was for a long time. My parents had moved out of that house, but still in Harwich.
Wow, that's incredible. We were on Cahoon's Road, and I remember going in there and doing everything from fishing for trout or pickerel or bass or ice fishing there. I learned to canoe. I learned to sail a little sunfish.
That's awesome.
It's awesome.
Fantastic. Well, I'm just happy to be admiring all these connections. It's great. And Brad, you've been a terrific guest. Our first golfer on the back nine, which is fantastic. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us, and continued success throughout the season.
You guys, thank you so much. And I love the name Back Nine. I thought you guys would be a golfer's website or a podcast. I will make sure I listen to your other guests.
Oh, thank you so much.
We'll send you the links. Thanks, Brad. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Well, that was great. Of course. I mean, he's fantastic. It's interesting. The thing I'm going to take away from that is not maybe what I thought I was going to take away going in, but I really like what he was saying kind of near the end, talking about the importance of mentorship, recognizing the mentors that were important in his life when he was younger, which I think we try to do, and also maybe recognizing that, and I had sort of probed this with him a little bit in the interview, the idea that you having accomplished something, Brad having accomplished something, we, all of us who are kind of at this stage in life, we can be those mentors for people who are coming up in their and just entering the workforce, and the things that we say matter to them.
Well, absolutely. And the little things that you can teach someone, shake a hand, look them in the eye, like those kinds of things. And I will tell you that very similar upbringing, golf taught me all of that. Yeah. I used to go my parents used to drop me off as a 13-year-old with 40-year-old guys that play as a single because I just wanted to play. And those guys at the end of the round would tell my dad, like, this guy's got good manners, right? Mm-hmm. But golf taught me that. Like, he would take me on a golf course and teach me every little piece of etiquette.
Yeah.
And those kinds of things those kind of mentors in your life do get you prepared for that.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be golf. I mean, it can be whatever sport you play. It can be theater. It can be music. It can be just being an intern, whatever it is, but paying attention to and making sure that we pass those on to our kids and that we understand that we have that responsibility now too, not just as the people asking and not just preparing our kids, but also as the people who are in position of having done some things in their lives that kids are looking up to.
And being open to it, right? You've got to be the kid. You got to be a kid that's open to it, and maybe you're not open to it from your parents, and that's okay. But find those other people.
Well, that is a heck of a way to start season 3 with our first actual golfer. And
a thoughtful one, too. I mean,
well, absolutely. Really thoughtful golfer and one who has been around for, as he said, 12th all-time in tournaments played, a guy who's always shown up. We thank you for showing up and listening to the first episode of season 3 here on The Back Nine, and we'll see you next week.
We're really happy that you could join us today on the Back Nine podcast, and we're really trying to build a community.
Yeah, so please not only listen, subscribe, follow us, download, share with your friends that you found something in our community here.
We really, really appreciate everybody who's downloaded even a single episode and shared the time with us. We know your time is valuable. Please also give us a 5-star review if you can. Thanks so much.
So I've mentioned Three Bridges Consulting. What they do is they market your company. They lead the creative, they find the audience. What they produce, commercials, social media content, possibly even documentaries. It's long form, it's short form. One recent success story, working with a home services company in Chicago, a company that refaces cabinets. They launched a campaign in January. They had 5 times the revenue of their previous January and $1 million more in revenue than in any prior month after they launched this campaign. Once again, it's Three Bridges Consulting. The number 3, bridgesconsulting.co. The Back Nine is flawlessly constructed by Janine Stella and recorded at Pixelworks Studios in Delray Beach, Florida.